The roar of a chainsaw wasn't the kind of sound Eli Morgan expected to hear on a quiet Texas morning. He dropped his coffee and bolted from the porch, boots thudding against the cracked stone steps as he sprinted toward the eastern fence line of his 150-year-old ranch. Dust swirled behind him in the golden morning light, catching the silhouettes of 3 men in reflective vests already halfway through cutting down a section of his split-rail fence. His fence. "Hey!" Eli shouted, his voice echoing across the empty pasture. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" One of the men glanced up but didn't stop. Another barked something into a walkie-talkie. The chainsaw kept whirring. Eli didn't wait. He stormed forward, yanked the fuel line from the saw's tank, and shoved the operator back. "You've got 10 seconds to explain before I call the sheriff." The man in charge, a tall guy with a clipboard and an unnatural smirk, stepped forward. "You're in violation," the man said coolly. "This fence line extends onto HOA-maintained property. We've issued multiple notices." "HOA," Eli barked. "I'm not in your damn HOA. This land's been in my family since before your subdivision was even paved." The man didn't flinch. The boundaries were updated after last year's zoning shift. "You were sent a letter informing you that your parcel now partially overlaps with Pine Creek Estates. As of January 1st, you're under the HOA's jurisdiction." Eli's fists clenched. Pine Creek Estates, the prefab monstrosity they built next door, had been inching closer for years. First came the noise. Then came the light pollution. But this, claiming his land. "I didn't sign up for any of that garbage," Eli growled. "You can't just absorb my ranch like some damn shopping mall expansion." "Actually," the man said, flipping the clipboard toward Eli, "we can. County approved the adjustment last spring. Your barn, that coral, and this fence, all on land now labeled as community buffer zone." Eli scanned the documents. They had his name, parcel number, even coordinates. It looked official. Too official. He looked up slowly. "Get off my land." "We have orders," the man said, suddenly stern. "You are in violation of Code 9A, failure to comply." Eli pulled out his phone and began dialing the sheriff. "Try me." The man hesitated, then nodded to the others. They packed up in silence, climbing into a white utility truck. But as the door shut, the man leaned out one last time. "You can't stop progress, Mr. Morgan. We own this neighborhood. You're just squatting on borrowed time." The truck pulled away, leaving dust and tension hanging in the air. Eli stood alone at the edge of his property, staring at the mutilated fence post, his great-great-grandfather's initials still carved into the wood. He didn't know how, but someone was trying to steal his land, not with bulldozers or court orders, with paperwork. And Eli Morgan had no intention of going down without a fight. 2 days later, Eli stood in the dim, over-air-conditioned records room of the Denton County Recorder's office, flipping through property files that should not exist. The clerk, a bored-looking woman with half-painted nails and earbuds tucked beneath frizzy hair, pointed at a manila folder on the counter. "That's the updated plat for Parcel 17A. Says here Pine Creek HOA submitted it with the rezoning request last May." Eli opened it. Inside was a high-resolution map stamped official in red ink. It looked like any other zoning plat, except this one showed a jagged dotted line cutting right through his pasture. It labeled the barn as unapproved structure within buffer zone and the eastern fencing as unauthorized perimeter extension. His hands tensed. At the bottom, in bold, were words that turned his stomach. "Signed and approved by Eli Morgan." "No," he muttered. "That's not my signature." He knew his handwriting like he knew the contours of the land. Neat, angular, consistent. What was on this page looked like a child's attempt at forgery. Sloppy, off balance, a complete fraud. "Who filed this?" he asked. The clerk shrugged. "HOA's lawyer, I think. They do bulk submissions through the developer." But she tapped her keyboard. "Yep. Filed under Richard H. Greeley, Pine Creek Estates Development Group. That's the name on most of these annexations lately. Annexations. The word hit him like a boot to the chest. He flipped to the filing metadata, and sure enough, the notary seal was fresh, but the name made his jaw lock tight. Susan Kells. Susan had notarized half the wills and deeds in this county. He knew her. She wouldn't have let this kind of fraud slide, unless... Is she working today? Eli asked. The clerk blinked, confused. Susan, she's gone. Retired, I think. Left in a hurry last fall. No forwarding address. Eli's breath cooled. A woman who notarized documents for 40 years suddenly disappears right before his land gets annexed. This wasn't an accident. It was a scheme. He left the office and drove straight to his lawyer, Todd Killian, a gruff, semi-retired cowboy in a blazer who'd helped his dad settle grazing disputes decades ago. Todd studied the file, his brow darkening. This ain't a misunderstanding, Eli, he said after a long silence. This is a hostile takeover with forged papers and county rubber stamps. So what do I do? Todd leaned back. You're up against a machine. A wealthy HOA backed by developers with friends in government. They'd got lawyers, inspectors, notaries. They'll drown you in red tape till you drown. Eli stared out the window, toward the horizon where his land met Pine Creek's edge. No, he said coldly. They'd drawn first blood. Todd raised a brow. You thinkin' lawsuit? Eli shook his head. I'm thinking war. The wind howled across the plains that night, rattling the windows of Eli's old ranch house like angry ghosts. He hadn't slept. Couldn't. The forged plat, the vanished notary, the smug warning. It all clung to his nerves like static. Sometime around 2:47 a.m., the motion sensor lights flared to life outside. Eli was up in seconds, boots slipping on floorboards as he grabbed the shotgun by the door. He flicked off the porch light, staying in the shadows, and peeked out the side window. A black SUV idled just beyond the gate. No headlights. No plates. His pulse quickened. He slipped out the back, staying low. The night was thick and dry, the moon casting silver streaks across the tall grass. As he moved along the barn, he counted 3 figures, one near the driver's side, one walking the perimeter, and a third, already inside the fence. That one was moving toward the house. They're not here to talk, he thought grimly. Eli raised his shotgun and stepped out into the open. You lost. The man inside the gate froze. The others turned. Then the one at the fence pulled a pistol. Eli didn't flinch. I'd think real hard before raising that. The man hesitated. This isn't your land anymore. You're trespassing. Eli took a step forward, chambering a shell with a metallic snap that echoed like thunder. You threatening me on my own damn property with a gun. At 3 a.m. He gestured to the security camera on the barn's eave. Smile. You're on 4 different feeds right now. The SUV doors flew open. Go. One of them barked. The 3 scrambled into the vehicle. Tires screeched. Gravel spat. Within seconds, they were gone, swallowed by the dark. Eli stood alone again, heart pounding, shotgun steady. He walked to where the man had been and spotted something in the grass. A wallet, dropped during the retreat. Inside were $200 bills, a Pine Creek Estates business card, and a laminated ID badge. Aaron Nichols, HOA board member, security chair. Eli stared at it in disbelief. A board member, armed, trespassing, threatening him in the dead of night. This wasn't intimidation anymore. This was criminal. Back in the house, he locked every door and window, turned on the perimeter alarms, and poured himself a glass of bourbon with hands still trembling from adrenaline. The phone vibrated. A blocked number. He hesitated, then answered. A distorted voice hissed. You want a war, Morgan. Be careful. We bury the last ones who tried. Click. Eli stood in silence, the ranch groaning in the wind around him. If they wanted war, they'd get it. But Eli Morgan didn't lose wars. He ended them. The next morning, Eli sat in his truck outside a half-finished duplex in Pine Creek Estates, watching a U-Haul pull away. A foreclosure sign dangled crookedly in the front yard. The house wasn't much. Fake shutters, paper-thin walls, zero soul. But to Eli, it was a key. Todd had said it plainly. They'd win through systems, beat the system, or beat 'em at their own game. Eli chose both. He launched Morgan Holdings LC that week. On paper, he was nobody. Just a silent partner with a bland name and a cash reserve from a recently sold pasture on the far side of the county. He had a frontman realtor, a bitter ex-agent who'd lost her license briefly thanks to an HOA smear campaign. They started snapping up distressed homes. The HOA loved foreclosures. They'd practically encouraged them with ridiculous fines for things like improper curtain color or overgrown rosemary bushes. Eli didn't flinch at the price. Every purchase came with voting rights. One house, one vote. By the end of month 1, he owned 3. By the end of month 2, 7. Pine Creek had 21 board-eligible homes. And he was getting close. He didn't go in guns blazing. He attended meetings in silence, sat in the back, took notes, wore khakis, nodded when they bragged about preserving the community's aesthetic integrity. But while he smiled on the outside, he studied every word. Donna Vexler, the Queen Bee president, ran the board like a cartel. Tight control, inside deals, iron discipline. But even she couldn't stop the clock ticking. Each meeting, Eli handed a new homeowner proxy to Todd. Subtle, boring, but undeniable. Still, something felt off. At the third meeting, Donna gave him a look that lasted too long. Polite, but probing. The next day, his realtor didn't show up to a scheduled closing. Eli called her. No answer. He drove to her office. Door wide open. Files rifled through. Laptop smashed. Coffee still warm. No sign of her. He called the sheriff. They filed a missing persons report. No forced entry. No witnesses. Just another name gone cold near Pine Creek. That night, Eli checked his security cams. A shadow moved past the barn. Then another. He watched silently as 2 figures, both in Pine Creek security polos, approached the edge of his land and turned back at the blinking red light of the new perimeter sensor. They weren't ready to try again. Not yet. Inside, Eli spread out a map of Pine Creek on his dining table. Colored dots marked each home he'd acquired. Only 3 more, and he'd have majority control. They had tried to erase him with papers. They had tried to scare him with guns. Now, he was taking their kingdom from the inside, one house at a time. And when he took the crown, there would be no mercy. 2 months and 10 homes later, Eli stood in the sterile Pine Creek Community Center beneath fluorescent lights, watching Donna Vexler's face twitch. The room was packed. Folding chairs, bored neighbors, HOA loyalists in pastel golf shirts. Donna cleared her throat as she wrapped up the meeting. Before we adjourn, she said smoothly, I'd like to announce a special vote next session to increase board eligibility requirements. Specifically, any ownership under 90 days will be excluded from voting. There it was. The move. They knew. They were trying to cut him out before he hit the majority. But Eli was ready. He stood. I'd like to motion for a vote tonight, he said. New business. Simple clause. Full HOA leadership re-election. Gasps whispered across the room. Donna's eyes narrowed. That's not standard protocol. It's in the charter, Eli replied, holding up a battered copy of the bylaws. Section 12C. Any member with more than 5 owned units may motion for emergency election with majority consent. He turned to the crowd. I own 10 homes. Murmurs rose. 10. Someone whispered. Eli nodded. You all pay fines for weeds. Get towed for parking an inch too close to the curb. Forced to repaint your homes because some board member thinks your shutters are too tan. He pointed at Donna. These people don't protect your home. They rule it, but they don't own it. We do. Donna stood abruptly. This man has no interest in our community. He's here to disrupt. He doesn't even live here. Eli smiled thinly. Maybe not, but I've lived next to it, long enough to watch what you people have done. He held up a flash drive. This contains documents filed with forged signatures, maps redrawn without owner consent, and proof of at least 3 homeowners being harassed into foreclosure. Todd stepped in from the back and handed copies to a few reporters quietly sitting along the wall. Eli had invited them hours earlier. I also have footage, Eli said, turning to the projector, of a Pine Creek board member pulling a gun on me at my ranch gate. The projector blinked to life. The room went dead silent as grainy black and white footage played. A man in a security vest raising a pistol. Eli with a shotgun. A face, unmistakable. Aaron Nichols. A woman gasped. Donna's mouth fell open. You think you're clever, she whispered. I think I'm done playing defense, Eli replied. Let's vote. One by one, the hands went up. Then more. Then nearly everyone in the room. It was over. Eli had won. Donna stormed out, her heels echoing like gunshots across the tile floor. Aaron Nichols was already gone, and later that week disappeared entirely. Vanished like the realtor, like Susan Kells. But Eli had flipped the board. He wasn't just a homeowner anymore. He was the HOA. And now, it was time to clean house. By sunrise, the Pine Creek HOA website had been wiped clean. The Meet Your Board section, gone. The bylaws, replaced with a placeholder marked, under reconstruction. And the latest agenda, just one item, restoration of justice. Eli wasted no time. His first move was suspending all active fines. That alone sent ripples through the community. Residents stepped onto porches in disbelief, watching as tow trucks rolled away without touching a single car. The contractors who'd been hired to issue citations were dismissed by noon. Then came the audits. Todd and his team set up shop in the old leasing office. Files were dragged in box by box. Violation records, inspection reports, receipts, and in every pile, a pattern emerged: favoritism, manipulation, intimidation. Homes not affiliated with the old board were fined more often. Board members' relatives were exempted from landscaping rules. Contractors with the highest rates always got the bids. But it was the Nichols Fund that turned everyone's stomach. Over $200,000 in HOA funds had been funneled into a slush account controlled solely by Aaron Nichols and Donna Vexler. Labeled as security initiatives, it was used for private investigators, intimidation tactics, and untraceable cash withdrawals, all tied to homeowners who'd resisted the HOA's creeping takeover. Eli turned it all over to the sheriff. By the end of the week, Donna was served with an arrest warrant for embezzlement, forgery, and conspiracy to commit fraud. Her mugshot landed on the front page of the local paper. The same day, Eli walked into the courtroom with his boots polished and his hat in hand, and filed a civil suit on behalf of the residents, class action, demanding damages for unlawful fines, wrongful foreclosures, and psychological harassment. But the real justice, that came with the letters. Each board member who'd enabled Donna's regime received a formal notice. Your membership has been revoked. Eli walked the notices up personally, watched their eyes go wide, watched them stammer, plead, curse. He said nothing, just tipped his hat and walked away. Then he posted the final motion. Effective immediately, any claim by the former HOA on land not explicitly owned, zoned, or recorded as Pine Creek property shall be considered null and void. In one paragraph, he undid years of creeping annexation. He reclaimed his ranch. The people cheered. A neighborhood once under surveillance came alive. Porches lit with laughter, kids playing in yards long abandoned, flags raised again. But deep inside, Eli knew it wasn't over. Not really. Too many people had disappeared. Too many pieces didn't add up. Aaron Nichols had vanished before the arrest. Susan Kells had never been found. And late that night, while scanning a bundle of old HOA mails retrieved from the office server, he saw something that chilled him. An encrypted message chain labeled simply, Project Redwood. It was dated 2 years ago, and it was signed by someone Eli had never heard of. M.R. Oversight. Eli stared at the screen, the name glowing back at him like a riddle from the grave. M.R. Oversight. The emails were fragments, encrypted metadata, broken headers, references to compliance targets, and Redwood Phase I. But beneath the tech gibberish was something darker, something coordinated. Someone had been pulling strings long before Donna's reign. Eli called Todd. "You ever heard of Project Redwood?" he asked. There was a long silence. "Where'd you hear that name?" "In the HOA server, hidden deep." Another pause. Then, "Come to the office. Bring a gun." When Eli arrived, Todd had already pulled files from his private safe, dusty folders from his old days in land arbitration. Inside were photocopies of deeds, zoning maps, and a legal battle from a decade prior. Not Pine Creek, a different development 2 counties south. Same pattern, sudden HOA expansion, land mysteriously annexed, homeowners strong-armed out. It ended when the entire board resigned after a whistleblower vanished, Todd said grimly, all under the shadow of something called Redwood Holdings. Same initials. Todd nodded, and same man behind it. He pulled a faded photo from the folder, a smiling man in a suit, flanked by city officials at a groundbreaking ceremony. Martin Reeve, big-time developer, Todd said. Real estate tycoon who uses HOAs like battering rams, builds planned communities, expands them by targeting legacy landowners, rewrites zoning laws, and pushes out resistance. By the time anyone notices, it's too late. The land's his, and the records are clean. Eli clenched his jaw. So Donna, Nichols, they were just his pawns. Looks that way. That night, Eli dove into every public record he could find. Martin Reeve didn't appear on any Pine Creek paperwork, but his shell companies were everywhere, listed as consultants, architecture firms, landscaping providers. Worse, 2 of the homes Eli had purchased. They'd been originally sold by Redwood Realty, Incorporated. He wasn't just fighting a corrupt HOA. He'd walked into a corporate land grab machine, perfected over years, disguised under community values and neighborhood enrichment. And now that Eli had control, Reeve would come knocking. He didn't wait. Eli drafted a letter, certified and direct. To Martin Reeve, your operation in Pine Creek is terminated. Further attempts to manipulate property boundaries, intimidate owners, or engage in unlawful acquisition will be met with legal retaliation and, if necessary, force. Consider this your only warning. Eli Morgan. He mailed it that night. 2 days later, a black SUV rolled up to the edge of his ranch again. No headlights, no movement. This time, Eli was waiting in the dark with a rifle across his lap and a body cam live streaming to 4 different clouds. The SUV didn't move. Then the window rolled down. And from inside, a man in a sharp gray suit smiled. I believe we have unfinished business, Mr. Morgan, he said. Eli stepped forward, eyes hard. Then let's finish it. Eli stood his ground, rifle steady in his hands, as the man in the suit slowly stepped out of the SUV. The moonlight caught the edges of his sharp features. Martin Reeve, the mastermind behind the decades of land grabs. The air between them crackled with tension. Eli didn't flinch, his eyes cold, calculating. Reeve smiled. You think you've won, Morgan. You're just a small-town rancher playing in a game you don't understand. Maybe, Eli said, his voice low. But I know when a man's digging too deep, and I know when to bury the shovel. Reeve's smile faded, replaced by something darker. This isn't just about Pine Creek. It's bigger than that. You've poked the hornet's nest, Eli. Everything you think you know is just the surface. The SUV's engine rumbled quietly as Reeve took a step closer, eyes never leaving Eli's. You think you've got the upper hand now that you control the HOA. But those homes you bought, they're worth nothing compared to the development we're building. Millions, even billions of dollars. Eli's fingers tightened on the rifle. We've been laying the groundwork for years. Everything in this town, the zoning, the annexations, the quiet acquisitions, all part of a much bigger project. You've taken down a couple pawns, sure. But the king, he pointed to himself. You're just getting started. Eli's gaze hardened. He knew Reeve wasn't just a businessman. He was a predator, and Eli had become his prey. But he wasn't about to be taken down. I've had enough of the smoke and mirrors. Reeve, you don't scare me. Reeve chuckled, as if humoring Eli's bravado. You should be scared. You don't even know who's really behind all this. His tone shifted, voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. I'm the last man standing. But I don't make decisions alone. There are others. Eli's mind raced. There had to be a deeper layer to this, something that had evaded him until now. But he wasn't going to let Reeve manipulate him. He stepped forward, bringing his rifle up slightly. Get out of here, Reeve. You're done. Reeve paused, eyeing him. Then with a slow nod, he turned toward the SUV. You may have won today, Eli, but you can't fight a force this big forever. He leaned into the vehicle, his voice carrying over his shoulder. I'll be seeing you. The SUV's engine roared to life, and it sped off into the night, disappearing into the distance. Eli stood still for a moment, watching the taillights fade. His heart was pounding in his chest, but his mind was already at work. Reeve was right about one thing. This was bigger than just Pine Creek. Eli had walked into something far more dangerous than he had ever imagined. He turned and walked back toward his house, his rifle slung over his shoulder. The battle wasn't over, not by a long shot. He'd exposed one layer of the truth, but the rest, that would take more than a few votes at a community meeting. As he entered the house, his phone buzzed. A single message from an unknown number. You're playing with fire. Be careful. Eli dropped the phone onto the table, his mind racing. He'd won this round, but Reeve was right. The war had only just begun. And this time, Eli would play to win.